Hello.
So,
Hi, sir.
uh, good evening to all, and good evening to you all too. Students, today we have an eminent speaker with us. Yesterday we were actually discussing on how women in the role of media personnel, that is either into print media or into, of course, otherwise the role they are playing whenever they are actually reporting from the ground. What all those challenges were there. And today we have Ms. Sakshi Sirari. So she will be actually guiding us how she is working on the social development sector with her SSGs. And let me give you some of the introduction how up to now what Sakshi ji has done tremendously. She is working on the social development sector, especially for uh, the things which she has taken as an initiative, which is actually uh, targeting towards the globalization, targeting towards the SSGs, and targeting towards the SDGs too. So, not taking much of the time, I request all students, those who can switch on their videos, do switch on their videos also. And if they have any of the idea or any of the questions in the within our this talk, so they can very well either unmute by yourself or you can raise your hand so that we can have an interactive session. So coming to the journey, how Sakshi ji has started. Let me give you a small introduction of her. Then we will keep on interacting on the her actually how this happened and why did it happen actually. So Sakshi ji is actually she is a graduate from TIS. You might be knowing Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Mumbai, and this is a premier institute, of course, where each and everyone, those who are into a social development sector, they are trying to go forward. Even the research people, those who are into this sector, they are looking forward towards getting the specialization from this, of course. Moving on to this, of course, her career journey, she is having a career span of for last decades, come somewhere around 10 years. She was working so far with the corporates, so far with the NGOs, and of course the government organizations. Of course, he was practicing more and more about the whatever the women-centric initiatives or women-centric programs are there in around those corporates or in around those government officials. So her journey, of course, previously, of course, before her initiative or before her joining into the social development sector, she was working there. Sooner, in a very latest stage, of course, past 2 years back, she have initiated one of the initiative, which is working towards the global environment, which is addressing SDG 11, and she have initiated one of this global industries, which is called as Bamboo Global Industries, working towards the creating of sustainable bamboo business, of course, and waste alternatives for the plastic, of course. So that is how her journey is. And thank you for accepting our request. Actually, Sakshi, we are actually these students. These are students from MSW and the Master of Communication. So
Okay, lovely.
these two batches are there, and there are three of the institutions which are actually participating in this. We have given this as an internship, but for students, those who are from Avinash Lingam, it's only the class, not the internship. And otherwise, those other institutions, they are actually under the internship. So it's basically a class for role of women in society and community development. But for Avinash Lingam, this class, otherwise it is an internship. So this is the background which is actually I'm giving. All the students are in post-graduation. So and all the students here present here actually in the meet are girls actually. So that is why we are actually covering this how exactly the role of women in. So moving towards your academic journey and the personal journey, how you switch on to this social development sector, or what interests you more actually to come on to this? Usually in India, we keep on doing or we keep on either moving towards social, that is science, technology, or engineering kind of background. So how your interest comes into this?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much, sir, for having me on this platform. It is such a privilege to connect with all these women, beautiful, lovely people who are trying to make a career in the social sector. Secondly, I would just request all the participants to just let us know on the chat that what language you're most comfortable in. Would you like me to talk in Hindi or mix of Hindi and English, or how?
Sakshi ji, more of the students are from South India, so better to
Oh,
go with English.
perfect, perfect. Okay, so just like sir asked me how I got into the social sector. So just like any other, I come from a very typical middle class family. I do not come from a lot of privilege. And my father wanted me to become a chartered accountant. And for the longest time, even I believed until I graduated that I wanted to be a chartered accountant because that's what my dad wants for me. And I did clear CP, like there are three levels: there's CPT, there's IPCC, and then there's final. So I cleared my CPT, like I'm an accounting technician, so to speak. But then when I went to Delhi, I was based in Uttar Pradesh district, Lucknow. And when I went to Delhi for my coaching, I started volunteering with this organization called Guild for Service. I was volunteering because I had no money, and they offered me a free place to stay. So that's how my career in the social sector began. This organization was run by actually Dr. V. Mohini Giri, who's the daughter-in-law of ex-president Dr. V.V. Giri, late Dr. V.V. Giri. So that's where I did a lot of very superficial social work over there, like getting group marriages done, and doing these kind of felicitation workshops for really influential women, who had done. So I met like the wife of Manmohan Singh. And so I was really like at that age, when you're 21, 22, I was really struck by the glamour of the sector and the kind of, advocacy one could do. So if you believe that something is right and you want to make that happen, I think social sector allows you the right kind of networking platforms, irrespective of what economic background you come from. So that was my first motivator. And then I applied for several colleges. I actually applied to study more about society. So I also applied at JNU for a sociology degree. I applied at TIS. I applied at Jamia. So सबसे पहले Tata Institute का result came out, and I got in there, and I'm so grateful because during my time in that institution, while working like you are in this rural sort of practicum, sort of immersive program. So during my time at TIS, when I did those things, I just realized, it's not just about the impact you make for the things you believe in, but when more and more people believe in what you believe in, and that in itself is a very different kind of power high that I was trying to chase. So yeah, that's how my journey began, and I worked in like various sectors, including disability, gender. The perspective was always gender, but I worked in disability, I worked in SHG empowerment, so on and so forth, education, etc.
So it is primarily, I must say that it's not by actually incident. It was your passion actually which draws you towards this sector actually.
Yeah.
Or other than this, of course, any other stories behind this?
Huh? What's
Okay. I think she unmuted herself by accident. Apart from this, like lots of interesting things obviously keep happening on the way, but yeah, like in terms of the beginning of my journey, I think this was majorly it. And obviously then when you start working and immersing yourself in realities, you just like get a sense of your reality gets really extended. I always thought, that, oh my God, apni life mein sabse zyada problem hai, like that kind of, and the more my kind of the way I studied and the way I approached, I was able to do two things. One, I was able to acknowledge my own privilege. Okay, no matter how much I compare myself to people who are better off, I do have a lot of privileges. Like my biggest privilege has been my education. My mother was a teacher in the private sector, and my dad was in a transferable job. So wherever they went, my mom always taught in the best schools, and I was able to study in the best schools for free. So I kind of got that kind of education that prepared me for the world of the future. And secondly, what social sector allowed me to do was, to kind of have that critical thinking, that empathy, that makes you absorb and understand other people's realities, irrespective of what my own reality is. So, that kind of objectivity to kind of immerse yourself in something and yet be detached from it, that kind of ability came to me through the knowledge that I shared and that I gained, and the kind of experiences this social sector and the kind of work allowed me to do. So yeah, these were the two major things.
So tell me something about your professional world where you are working with the corporates and the government organizations. What were your highs and lows actually when you were working for those people? How it is different if you compare with the social development? Although I do know, because I was also working as an corporate professional. So I do agree on that there are so much variance on this.
Of
But what are your stories behind this? What are those highs and lows when you were working for corporates and the government sector?
Okay, so I started my career obviously with the corporate sector. My first job was at SheThePeople.tv. It was a small startup. It hadn't been funded yet. Anand Mahindra funded it later, and now it's like a huge thing. I'm sure a lot of the girls here have also seen at some point She the People ka koi na koi meme, and they've shared it with their friends. So I worked in that organization. It was very small, and that's when the founder of that organization, Shelly Chopra, she was my first mentor. Okay, so this is one very important thing that I'd like to tell all the ladies present here. Always have a mentor. Always, wherever you're working, just connect with a preferably female, but if not female, just connect with a leader. And it's not necessary that you have the same mentor for a prolonged period of time, but wherever you are, always hold on to someone, who's more experienced, whose life you would also like to live certain aspect of their life at some point in the future. So that really helped me. Shelley was the first person who taught me how to tell stories right, how to kind of create that pyramid of stories where you pique the other person's, the reader's interest, and then you tell them the actual thing that you're trying to say. So all of those things I learned at She the People. That was a great experience. For me, that I had to quit that job because it was largely a work from home model, and I'm a very social person, so it didn't work for me. Then I worked with Keto, which is like a crowdfunding platform. Amazing organization, very corporate sector setup, 250% per annum ka growth rate tha us organization ka. But then, my job there was to then tell stories of people who were looking to raise money through crowdfunding. So content creation, user interaction, all of that. And then I realized कि भाई मतलब it's just pandering to a profit seeking organization, and the person eventually does not really make a lot of money. And slowly I also worked with another organization that was manufacturing clothes for Zara and H&M, and I helped them set up their foundation. I was their first so to speak CSR manager, and I worked with them over there. Also, I just felt it was very superficial, and it was not really that impact driven work. There is this book that I downloaded today, which is called Impact Players. It's one of the best books of this year, which talks about how you can use capitalism to create maximum impact in the world. Unfortunately, we are in a very nascent stage right now of that. So even the CSR foundations are largely doing things only for compliance, and they're not looking at impact, so to speak. So that was the reason I quit the social sector. I also got an opportunity right after that to work with the Ministry of Women and Child Development. I worked on policy implementation, where a large part of my job was to see whether or not policies are reaching the last mile. So when I say the last mile, people who do not know how to read a newspaper, people who do not have radios, people who are just living on day-to-day basis. So how do you make them aware of policies? How do you get them access to all these policies and benefits? So working with the government, I am not trying to point any fingers, but during my time, which was the present government's time, I realized that a lot of it was they were doing very minimum work, and the kind of paperwork to kind of create a report card that showed a lot of impact there was a large gap. And I realized that, okay, now I have a decent understanding of what needs to be done, how it is done. I understand that, there are two things common between social work and the democracy. The bigger it gets, the lesser the impact becomes. So that kind of happened. I realized that maybe I'll have a small organization. I'll just impact maybe 100, 200, maximum 1,000 people, but that impact would be impactful. And then obviously now we are trying to scale it up and create a capitalistic model where we are also maximizing impact without affecting the core ethos of an organization. So that was that kind of feeling came to me when I was working with the ministry and the state bureaucrats, the DM, and the district bureaucrats, the district magistrate and the development officer. I also actually, before that, I had worked briefly with this very popular person called Afroz Shah, who's popularly known for the Versova beach cleanup campaign. I worked with Amit Satham, who's the MLA of Juhu area in Mumbai. So working with this team of people, we created a waste management design model where all the outlets in that belt of Versova, they were managing their waste, and based on the nature of waste they were creating, we were able to create a very effective waste management design. which is now being implemented across like I think around 10 wards in Mumbai. So all those learnings, my learnings from the corporate sector about how to display it better, learning from the ministerial setup as to how to document it better, and obviously my own understanding that my institution allowed me, my understanding of critical thinking, empathy with individuals, I was able to sum that up. I'd just like to share a personal story, sir, if you'll allow me.
Yeah, please, please.
In September 2020, 11 September 2020, I met with a major accident. Like I was driving a car that collided with a truck head on. I literally slipped death by a whisker. That's what they say. My knee, my right foot bone came out through the knee, and I had to undergo like a very intense surgery. I was in Shahjahanpur. I was taken to Lucknow. I got treatment there, and I was bedridden for like good 3-4 months. I couldn't walk. And like I said, I'm a very social, very active person. I got so stressed out and so depressed. I quit my job. And then I thought, like, what am I going to do with my life now? And in that moment, you just feel very incapacitated. Obviously, now I can jump, skip, and hop. But at that time, I did not know if I could ever do it again. So that is when I decided to set up my organization. In October, I think I registered my nonprofit organization. And I used to go on a walker to the municipal corporation's office. I used to go on a walker to the waste management facility that was just being set up by the government here. And that is how my journey began. And as I learned to walk again, I learned to build my own organization. Now we are about 1.5 years old, and we have helped save around 150 tons of waste so far from getting into landfills. And this is purely done not by machines but by people. And all these people from the rag picker community, whose job is largely non-formal, undocumented, for it's not a part of the GDP, we have been able to formalize jobs for nearly 200 people. And we hope to multiply this number, and we hope to reach 1,000 people by the end of December 2022. Also, we all want to make some money. We all have our own dreams and aspirations. So I, really thought about it, what I wanted to do. And that's when I set up a green enterprise, which is Bamboofied Global Industries. And what we do with Bamboofied was, our idea was, bamboo is a very fascinating product, guys. You can replace it to whatever iron does, bamboo could do it. Whatever wood does, bamboo can do it, and better. And obviously, bamboo is an amazing replacement to plastics. It grows really fast. It's not a wood product, so there's no interference from the forest department for cutting off bamboo trees. So there were lots of advantages. We are literally trying to build an ecosystem where we are doing capacity building with farmers, where they're growing different varieties of bamboo. We are doing skill development through a non-profit, where we are inviting various bamboo artisans from across the country, the best of the best. We're inviting them to the city. We are getting trainings for women. And then we're obviously also innovating on product economy, which we are now, we're also on Amazon. So if anyone of you wants to check out our products, Bamboofied is the name of my company. So yeah, that's how my journey happened. And that's how each step of the way, being in the corporate, being in the NGO space, being with the government, shaped my journey. I wouldn't have it any other way, but the idea for me was to be very mindful of what I am doing, and to not let that kai baar aisa hota hai, many times it happens, especially in the sector that we are working in. We don't get paid a lot of money initially, and it gets very demotivating after a point. Ki lagta hai ki, why did I pick this career? I could have also gone in business development, basic marketing kar leta main, ya kar leti, and I could have made more money. But you just have to be mindful that whatever you're gaining in the long term, it's going to give you so much more than money. That just have a little patience, just be mindfully, keep experiencing what you're experiencing. It's all going to shape out in 4-5 years from your career starting. It'll all shape out.
Saksiji, here I would like to know more about how you are creating this social enterprise. What are all those inputs you are taking in, and how you are developing this input towards the output, and how exactly the money is being incurred by that. Of course, for each of the value addition, you require a money. So how you are creating this particular ecosystem actually?
That's a very interesting question, actually. And I would also like to credit Mr. Pradeep also for that. So our idea is that we have a non-profit organization. We do waste management. We raise some money. We use that money to obviously meet our expenditures, and whatever surplus we make, we try to get trainings. We are very focused on skill enhancement at this point. Market linkages, like I said, I'm a communications expert, and I do have, like, over the years, social workers are very good at networking. And, that's going to be one of your key assets. Your social capital, guys, is going to be one of your key assets. And my social capital has really helped me connect with the right people, brand my product appropriately. So market linkages, I have kind of sorted out of that. Of course, I also have a co-founder who has his own industry. So he comes with that expertise as well of, supply chain management, forward linkages, etc. And so, yeah, that's what we do. We are at this stage of our existence. We are focused on building skills. On, obviously, we live in a very superficial, post-capitalistic world. So we are focused on packaging, branding, etc., doing all those activities driven towards that. And that's how we are building a brand. As of now, we are relatively very, very small. We hardly have a turnover. Our product prototypes got sorted and enlisted just 2 months ago. So, but yeah, that's how we are taking that journey. And the idea is to obviously, after a point, be able to skill build across cities so that women can. So the problem with rural women also is that they cannot get out of their houses. They have goats, they have like bovine animals, they have children to take care of, they have husbands to feed, they have old in-laws to take care of. So what we do is we try to design a process where they can, like the whole Lijjat Papad model, we kind of take inspiration from that. So we give a certain processed material. So if I'm talking about my bamboo straws, our bamboo straws are brought, they're made, holes are made into it, and then they are cut into the lengths that are required. And then women come to me, or I go to the women and I give them a certain number of these straws, and they are supposed to just buff it, file it with their hands. So we give them the filing sheets, we give them the straws, and they just, whenever they have time in the evening, when they're sitting with their children under the sun, they all are filing. So it's really funny. Children are also filing with them. And so they complete their output, and per straw, we give them an incentive. So as of now, women are able to, without having to step out of their houses, are able to very easily make 250, 300 rupees per day, which is decent for them because they're not working like full 8 or 6 hours, just 3-4 hours in between sporadically. They're able to spare and make that kind of money. So that's the goal. Labor force participation, Jayati Ghosh, I'm sure many of you girls have also read her work. She moved out of India from JNU to the Sussex University, but she's done some tremendous research on women's participation at the workforce, and it has been constantly declining for the past decade. So the idea is, and I work a lot on sexual harassment of women at workplace. I do a lot of workshops in that. That's a personal passion. I don't like make a lot of money, or it's not a money driven thing. Obviously, I get paid though. So over there also, what we realized is that organizations where gender participation is balanced versus organizations where there are more men or more women, the most profitable are organizations where the gender participation is balanced. So that's what our focus is. Even if our initial ROI, initial profitability is not that high, we try to make sure that 50% of our employees are women everywhere across processes.
So now I would like to know exactly what are the real-time challenges once you are into this profession, and of course this is the social development. There are two of the challenges which usually each of the organizations, either the NGOs, Section 8 companies, or the trust, they are facing. The first is we are very much into the people, those who are into the rural ecosystem. So what are those challenges? How we can approach the rural people? That of course, you need to come down. You have to be sitting for that classes which we are taking on for their development, for their skill development. And secondly, there will be the challenges, of course, not only for this, even for asking other organizations to come in and support us in regard to this. What are those challenges and how you are actually tackling these challenges?
Okay, so I want to talk about this first as a woman, as a female. There are lots of challenges that I have faced in the past years. When nobody gives, sorry for my language, but I can't think of a better word. Nobody gives two shits about how good you are at your work. If you're a woman, the only thing they look at is, arey, matlab, because most of the power holders are men. So everybody thinks that you're just seeking out a favor based on your gender. So I really, although I very consciously always try to, not play the gender card, like even if it's a genuine gendered concern for me because how society is, I try to not do that. I have been available for work at like 9 a.m., 9 p.m., 1 a.m. in the morning. There was, so in the landfill dumping ground where our factory is, there was a fire. And at 1 a.m., I was there. I was there standing with the guards, helping, calling the fire brigade, helping douse the fire. So all of those things are definitely important. As a woman, and so my father has been a great source of strength. Very recently, a lot of sick things were being said about me. Shahjahanpur is a very small city, so you get to know, and people were talking a lot of things about my that allegedly I have slept my way through success because I'm getting so successful in such a short period of time. So I was very upset. I wanted to close down everything and just go home and, just be in the safety and comfort of my house. And that's when my father just told me that, what, Sakshi, you have to be prepared for this. So this is going to happen. So even I would say to the participating women out here, these lovely ladies, that just be prepared that people are almost never going to accept you for your talent. They will always have some or the other inappropriate thing to say, something to bring you down, something to put you back in the little box that they think you belong to. That is always going to happen. So just, you have to grow thick skin. You do not have to get bothered by it. You just have to create it like a noise in the background. Jaise abhi main aapse baat kar rahi hu, to like on the side, there's some construction work going on and I'm not at all focused on it. So that's what it is. It's all noise. Apart from that, working with rural realities, there are 2-3 challenges. First advice I would give, if you're trying to, build a relationship with an SHG, is have a plan of action in place. Don't think that I'll go and I'll roll with it, because udhar kya hota hai na, these women, first of all, they will place trust in you. It's not going to be easy. Once they place their trust in you, and you show up, and then you don't show up for a very long time because you want to take 2 steps back and you want to plan out things now. What happens is the community around them, again, like what's happening with you and me in the largest frame of things, that's also happening at the grassroots. They're trying to shove women back into the box where they think they belong. And they're trying to tell them, Arey, these guys come and go, nothing is going to happen, your life is not going to change, you're still going to be, making gobar ka pods, that's all you're good for, and that's what they tell them. So always have a plan in place. Even if you know for a fact that you're smarter than these people, don't ever be very conscious that you're not trying to make them feel like that. Always drink and eat with them. Never carry your own water bottle. And yeah, just like be with them, give them a feeling, that you belong with them, and you kind of understand, no matter if you look different, you talk different, but you kind of want to belong to them. So that's always my approach. As a, I wouldn't say strategy, but what has really worked for me is that I always go and first of all interact with the children of these women, because that when those children start getting comfortable, the women automatically, their defenses are little lowered. So that's one thing that I do. And yeah, like I said, just make them feel like they're smart. Ask as many questions as you can. Try to understand what they want, and just go with the flow. I mean, and have a plan.
Of course. If we don't have any plan, how we can execute on that and how we can actually interact. And coming to, if suppose we are into the SHGs, and the SHGs are more into the either they are making certain articles or they are preparing certain things so that they can fetch out some of the money out of this. But there is one big struggle in between SHGs and this money making, of course, business, that is social enterprises. Absolutely. That is the market. That is the marketing.
Absolutely.
More or less, either I'm also working with some of the SHGs. Some are registered, so they are being registered, so they are getting some of the benefits, or of course not the benefit. They are getting some of the inputs from the government schemes. But there are certain, I must say, out of 10 of the SHGs, 7 are non-registered. Still now, three SHGs are only the registered SHGs, and they are getting some of the benefits or getting the deliverance on the schemes.
Right.
So how we can actually use this particular gap area for these SHGs, and how we can create the market linkages to these SHGs, because they are not registered up to now. So how and what we can do for them?
So just registering with the NRLM, which is the National Rural Livelihood Mission, is not your only option, right? The other options that you have are all these MFIs, microfinance institutions that are coming up, and they are very corporatized. So they have targets. So they want to kind of then, fulfill their targets. They want to be able to get more and more women to get these loans. So definitely that's one point. And secondly, the other point is that you can also, when it comes to when we talk about market linkages, the best way to create a market linkage is just you. You are the effective market linkage. There are organizations. There's actually one very interesting organization called FYND, FYND. It's funded by Google and Reliance, and they are basically coming up with a platform called Find for Good, which is a sort of dedicated marketplace for non-profit organizations and products and created by these SHGs. Apart from that, there's also the Amazon Saheli program. So as long as you're able to educate and organize, you would be able to then the market linkages. A lot of capitalists have recognized this gap, and there are several organizations that are coming up in that space.
Okay, during this market linkages, are they getting the money for getting or utilizing or actually going to the market for taking some of the articles from the market for their capacity building? Did they allow this thing?
Capacity building, again, there are several organizations. I'm so sorry, 1 second, just I'm getting a call, excuse me.
Okay. So students, if you have any queries, please write it on the chat box in regard to SHGs. What are those challenges of you have faced some of the challenges once you are working with NSS or working with those ladies in rural areas. If you have any of the queries, please write it on the chat box so that we can take on those questions in the last hours. Or I can also answer on those because we keep on working with these SHGs. Yeah, please, Sakshi, you can continue.
I'm so sorry, guys. This non-stop call was constantly distracting me. I had to take care of it. Yeah, sorry. So as I was saying that we were talking about market linkages, right?
Market linkages. There are two market linkages. Suppose there are two types of market linkages. Usually SHGs are looking out market linkages to actually sell out their products. But some of the people, those who are actually working with SHGs, they are asking that we don't have a tool even for the capacity building. How to go for it?
Well, actually, sir, you would have probably be able to guide them much better. But in my limited understanding, as much as I can share, I would just like to say that there are several programs. There is the with respect to Uttar Pradesh, there is the Jan Shikshan Sansthan, there is KVIC, there are several across India, Bank of Baroda, a lot of CSR projects basically under which there are several training programs that are held. So you'll have to do your a little bit research based on what localized skill you're trying to develop the community. Now you cannot go to a community, say for example, if someone is from the Northeast, you cannot, it would make more sense for you to then go and work with them on a indigenous product or service. So if you're in Arunachal, working on packaging rice and spices, that makes a lot of sense. If you're in Assam, Nagaland, working with bamboo products makes a lot of sense, right? And obviously all the corporates, larger corporates that exist there, they would, mid-sized organizations, they would definitely have a mandate which is on the lines of this. So you could possibly look out there, and I think sir has also helped us out.
I can add on into this. Suppose if we are actually going for marketing or creating a market linkages for the SHGs, of course, I do agree with Sakshi that KVIC, KVIP is giving, but these organizations, those government institutions, they are giving the fund or the whatever the money they are giving it. This is as per the schemes, or this is as per the projects which SHGs are actually projecting. But there is one hurdle, or there is one actually gap area in regard to this actually scheme funding and all. They are not giving anything which is not related to the purchase of the objects or the tools. So in this particular space, the SHGs are facing struggle, or they are facing the problems area. What we do actually, we ask other crowdfunding agencies to go for it and help them to support on those purchase of those tools and all. So these are the different areas where we need to actually work on. So those students, those who are working for SHG, those who are working under social development sector, they must know how to do the crowdfunding also. Because whenever you are going for a crowdfunding, it means you are going to purchase a tool actually for the particular organization. By that tool, actually, they are making the goods, and that is what they are selling it out on the market. Of course, a program-based or the project-based activities are being done through KVIC, through KVIB, and even the corporates also. Yeah. But it's a different structure where you need to create an ecosystem on that. But for smaller SHGs, there is a different pattern, and we need to help it out.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. And I mean, might I suggest that we can, I mean, I'd be open to also conduct a session on crowdfunding with the girls, with the students. Because I've worked in that sector, I can bring in some experts also to talk about it and how, you know, social sector ka needs driven, how can we do that kind of crowdfunding? It's a very strategic space, very new, a lot of different strategies exist. Also, I do not know, sir, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the District Industries Commission also from time to time provides all these input tools. They have certain schemes that keep coming in. So like, for example, very recently under ODOP, which is again a very UP specific scheme, they distributed input materials for Zari Zardozi in Shahjahanpur district, which is specific to the OD1 district, one product in Shahjahanpur. And similarly, input materials were distributed for different inputs across, and trainings were provided, everything. And plus they were given a payment.
There is a bit variance, Satyji, in regard to Uttar Pradesh and how other states are actually focusing in.
Yeah, but I'm sure District Industries Commissions there also do something.
What Uttar Pradesh did is, they are actually, once they are going for one district, one project, that is what actually Yogi Adityanath ji was also telling on the same day when I was there in the UP conclave. He was telling that in Uttar Pradesh, whenever we are going for ODOP, we are giving each and everything to those people, those who are working for them. But in other states, like if I take the case of Tamil Nadu itself, I'm getting every day a call from Tamil Nadu. One of the person is calling. He is looking for that pottery shop. That is, he's looking for the pottery wheel. Okay. And we keep on asking to KVIC and DIC that please support him. He is looking out for that. But they are saying that in our mandate, in our state mandate, it is not there.
Yeah, that's not there.
This variance is there in different states are following different structure actually. So that is why. If they are going also, suppose Uttarakhand has taken that, they have come up with one district, two product now. Like Uttar Pradesh has taken one district, one product. Uttarakhand is actually focusing on one district, two products. So if suppose some other states are coming in with the same kind of structure, then of course we can help out through DICs also. But you need to plan and the states need to actually support on this.
Absolutely. Just wanted to add to that as well. So like recently we were trying to get a training done through, based on my discussion with you and then Sailesh sir and all. We were trying to find funds to do a training and where we wanted to call in an expert, and experts come at what, 2,500, 3,000 rupees per day, and they want to do a 10-day training. But this person gave us, they're saying that their budget is only 600 rupees per day. Plus Ana Jana, so that kind of deficit funding is also required. So as a social worker, like I said, when you're in your college, your biggest strength is going to be building your social capital. Just make sure you have very diverse set of people, you know, somebody who's in the corporate setup, somebody who's willing to work with governments, and that's how you will be able to do it. You have to hustle. Running around is up to you, and that's something you will have to do yourself.
That is what. This is why we keep on interacting with other organizations, even the government ministries, even the government officials, ministry people. That is why I keep on going to the meetings. That is why we are actually working for that, because we require this kind of capacity building for our students, for our interns, for our, of course, other people, those who are looking out for the support. So coming, of course, Satyji, now, how these social enterprises, are they really going to build up a nation, of course, as a supreme power, or what is your views into this? How our social enterprises can actually build up as a nation?
That's whether or not we'll be a global superpower is a very different this thing, at least from my understanding. But yes, I do believe that socio-capitalism is the future. In the 2014 meeting of the World Economic Forum at Davos, which is, basically all the corporate leaders of top of the world, they meet in at this meeting at the World Economic Forum, and they develop concepts like different, what is going to be the next development agenda, right? And they in 2014 was the first time they spoke about circular economies, where they spoke about that businesses of the future are only going to survive if what their entire process is also focused on giving back to the planet, not just like people. So, the Amazons and the Flipkarts really need to redesign, realign their product base and the kind of service mechanisms that they have in place in such a manner that the process in itself is rejuvenative. Say, for example, there is a company based in Sweden. Sweden is known, Swedish cosmetics are always known as the best in the world. So what they've done as pioneers is they've created these copper cases of lipsticks, of your compact powders. So whenever you order, say, a lipstick from that company, they will only send you the cake of the lipstick wrapped in a vegetable-based plastic sort of thing. It's a vegetable cellulose based packaging. So you just put it in your case and that's it. You've not created any kind of waste. There's no plastic case ka waste happening. And the cellulose also goes and becomes compost. So these are the businesses of the future, not just because it's cool, but also because the earth kind of needs it. The earth is 4.5 billion years old in its biological number, but the way we've been depleting it, it's become close to 6 billion years old. And the average lifespan, expected lifespan of Earth is going to be 10 billion years old. And everybody, we are seeing across the world from the COP26 how countries are also, strengthening their commitments and trying to come through to the point where, industries and organizations through the World Economic Forum are also focused on circular business models. So no matter what you decide, whether 2 years down the line you decide that I don't want to be in the in the social sector, I want to start my own business, or I want to do something else. Just always have in mind that no matter what you do, you've now gained a certain understanding of the world that not everybody will have. People are colleges, all these IITs and IIMs of the world, they just train you to make money. They just train you to be able to do things that help organizations make money. But you, my friends, have a critical thinking. You can ask the right questions. You can look at things from a holistic perspective. So just do that. And I think that's what the world needs. And try to bring up your children like that. That's the only thing we can do.
Sakshi, adding to your, of course, suggestions on this, how exactly you are looking forward, how Japan or the China has built up their cluster model? Did really our Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative is similar to that, or localization of our products is really similar to those things, or still we are far away from that particular?
I would not know much about their cluster. I mean, I've heard about it, but I don't know enough to compare and say. But they did compare it to the entire Swadeshi movement of the Gandhian times. So definitely the idea of a globalized, now we are from a globalized world, we are talking about a glocalized world, right? Where a large part of what we are manufacturing has to be locally produced, locally sourced. Can you imagine, until very recently, India did not even have an LED chip manufacturer. We use LED bulbs like anything, but we had no manufacturer in the country. So definitely we want to be able to focus on that. We want to be able to focus on greener solutions, and then be able to, not just emulate what everybody else, what China is doing, but to identify what our needs are. And to be able to manufacture, like I said, in a circular approach. That's how I look at it. But I would definitely like to hear your thoughts, sir, on this whole comparison with the Japanese and the Chinese cluster models.
My suggestions, of course, once we are comparing to China model or the Japan model, only thing they are good in the cluster in the sense how they were producing anything. The two gone for this circular economy, and they are, of course, far before forward to us actually. They started this somewhere 15 years back or 20 years back, this circular economy. Okay.
I think ODOP is also inspired by Japan, some Japanese.
Japan only. We took this particular initiative from there only. They have initiated this localization part with the cluster model. And from there only, we have taken this model of ODOP. And of course, this is giving a better boost to all the localization and the local artisans, and of course the economy too. So this is how, but we need to compare. Only thing is, see, whenever we are comparing to any state to the state or state to the center or country to the country, the method will be, can be the different, but you need to think for your people first. What exactly the needs of your people, what exactly the needs of that particular local people, what exactly the needs of the particular local market. And based on those localization, local needs, local market, you need to actually prepare a localization plan and the circular economy. I do agree on this, of course, because we are where actually we are targeting towards ecology, we are targeting towards environment, and we are, of course, the first nation which is calling for solar power to be in the world. So we need to think for that. So that is how. Now coming to, of course, Saksiji, how the government support is there for SHGs, or did you prefer government support for the SHGs or the corporate social funding? So CSR, what you are looking for actually, basically, if SHGs should go, they should go for what? Either the CSR funding or they should go for the government schemes.
See, since all of us come from very different realities, like very different geographical locations, also, like you said, sir, I think everybody needs to figure out their options. Needs assessment is needed. The needs assessment framework that was launched by Amartya Sen. We need to look at it from that lens always. In my context, in the context of my experience in working with UP, NRLM on paper is an amazing scheme. There are intensive blocks. So the district is divided into several blocks. Each block has certain number of villages. So there are few blocks in every district that have been identified as intensive blocks, where they give a lot of revolving fund. Revolving fund is like what you get, like 15,000 every few months. Once you've exhausted it, you get another round of money. There they give you 1 lakh rupees. But the kind of lobbying and running around that you have to do for that takes up a lot of time. You might as well rather have like a very solid plan, like a good business model canvas in place, and maybe start small, but CSR's local corporates will definitely help you out. Like in my case, I come from Shahjahanpur, which produces the largest sugarcane in UP, the largest quantity. So there are a lot of sugar mills. So those sugar mills have a lot of CSR mandate. So through them, we are able to kind of get some access to CSR funding. So that's my contextual reality. We do have our SHGs registered with the NRLM for more than a year now, but their first installment of 15,000 rupees has also not come through, despite the fact that I was working in the DM office for such a long period of time and everybody knows me. And I just could not, after a point, following up became like so, the return on that following up was not decent for me. I would rather spend that time and energy approaching corporates, and that model kind of worked. So yeah, I just need to contextualize. I reiterate what I said, be a hustler, just connect, collaborate, and thrive. That's what women social workers can do best.
Okay. So you as a professional and you as an social development activist, you are saying that, okay, going towards the corporate or CSR funding is more, of course, feasible. And of course, this is giving the impact which they are actually talking for.
Now, and the compliance rate has also improved. Like now people are spending more and more.
More and more, of course. So my last question to you, of course, for all the girls, what is your message to them? How they should look forward for their career, how they should look for the country, and how they should look for, of course, once they are into the corporate or even the government sectors, what they can think for themselves, for the people. What is your views on that?
Okay, guys, girls, I'm so sorry if anything I say offends you, but this is my opinion. You can pick and choose what you like to pick and choose. But don't be focused on getting married. Yeah, like I have seen so many amazing social workers from my time who just gave into marriage because they thought they were getting old and they will probably not find someone. You will find someone when the time is right. It's not a benchmark. It's not a it's not a milestone in your life. It's just another step in the process. You will after social work, the opportunities people might think are limited, but there are so many government programs, ministerial programs that are happening now where you can, join on a consultant basis. There are so many corporates, so many CSRs that are actively, expanding, because since the new CSR amendment, they are supposed to any which way give money to the PM relief fund. So what they try to do is उनके लोकल एरिया में उनके फैक्ट्रीज के आसपास के वर्कर्स को ही वो कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग करके दे वांट टू यूटिलाइज दैट मनी so that it works in their favor. So you might end up being in the corporate space like that. No matter what you do, always stay connected with all the people that you have ever come across and met. Always try to make more and more connections because your social capital will be bigger than your economic capital, and make it your wealth. That is going to be your core strength area. And as a woman, all I want to say is people will talk shit. You, no matter where you are, no matter how elite an organization you're working with, whether it's a Boston Consulting Group or it's a small time local organization, you are going to face shit everywhere. So just treat that as noise and clearly in your head, just know what I'm here for and just focus on that. So these would be my 2-3 messages. And I'm really sorry if I offended anyone through what I said. But
No, of course not. I feel all are, of course, matured enough to think for their career per se, and of course, everything. Students, if you have any questions or queries, please let us know by chat, or even you can unmute yourself. And I request all to switch on your video so that we can have a pic at least.
Yeah, it really helps me. Yeah, talk nice in a better manner. And also, please ask questions, make comments, disagree, agree with whatever I said.
I request all to switch on your videos, please, so that we can have pics.
Janet, Jumana, Dolly, Shikha, Vetri, Surya, Venkatesan, Gokila. Come on, guys. Vibisha, Rashmi, Mohana, Priya, Sophia, Sinduri. Such beautiful names. Can't I see any of the faces? Thank you, Anu. Thank you for acknowledging.
4, 5, 6, 7. Nice to hear you, madam. Thanks, Anu.
Thank you, Anu. Hi, Mohana. Hello, everyone. So do you have any comments, any questions, anything you would like to say to me, or any experience that you would like to share? Probably. Thank you, Vetri.
If someone would like to say anything about today's session or today's talk, they can very well unmute yourself and talk on that. Anything which you are looking for, or anything which we can guide you on. Nothing. Our students are very smart, Sakshi.
Yeah, useless workshop.
Of course. Thanks to all. I am just closing for the day. Thank you to all. Namaskar.
Oh, there is a
Anuji is preparing for civil services since last 4 years and still unsuccessful. So, Sakshi, your comment on this?
You know what? Yes. I know a bunch of friends who prepared for IAS and then they, settled at PCS, and some of them did not make through PCS also. But the kind of knowledge that they built, during this time, they became like state leads and country leads at their various organizations. Basically, all the knowledge that you're gaining, like I said, be mindful, focus on the knowledge that you're building. It will never be wasted. You will always have something to gain. So don't be disheartened. Yeah, life is too long. Too many things you will do. Maybe IAS officers will run around you that, ma'am, please come and do some interventions in our city also.
I want to do social work through that bit. If I can't get them, what should I do? Anuji, we are planning for one of the fellowship. If it is been on the road, or if it is, of course, rolled down, you will be the first person to come in for that. That is my promise from my end.
And that's not the only way you can do social work, Anu. Social work you can do even without a degree.
Without a degree. That is what. If you are actually trying to catering for the people, you are there and your people are there around you. So you need to actually think out and figure out. We are there, of course, to guide you on. So thanks to all. I'm closing for the day. Thanks, Sakshi, for being with us, and what a wonderful talk you actually put on today's session. Thank you to all. Thank you.
Such a privilege. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am.